Story 1. It began on an unexpectedly chilly evening when I met Alex for what was supposed to be a light, delightful dinner at a trendy downtown bistro. Alex's smile was dazzling, warm and welcoming, but there was an intensity in the eyes behind that grin, a glimmer that hinted at secrets waiting to be discovered. We talked, laughed, and exchanged playful banter, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. As the courses passed, Alex's compliments became edged with unnerving precision, and the conversation took unexpected turns. Questions about my routines, where I lived, and even minor details of my daily life crept in like unwelcome intruders. While the soft hum of background chatter attempted to mask the discomfort, every so often I caught Alex glancing at the entrance as if waiting for something, or someone, to appear. At one point during dessert, when the ambient lights dimmed to create a more intimate atmosphere, my eyes wandered to a peculiar detail: a discreet envelope slid onto my plate. Its presence was as chilling as it was unexpected. Trembling, I opened it to reveal a short, handwritten message: "I see you." The words, scrawled in a hurried yet precise hand, sent a shock of adrenaline through my veins. I forced a smile and continued with the date, trying to rationalize that it might be a bizarre prank. But as the evening wore on, I noticed subtle, sinister shifts in Alex's behavior. When I excused myself to use the restroom, I caught a glimpse of Alex slipping out through a side door. A gnawing dread took hold. Was I merely part of an elaborate scheme? With every step back to the table, I felt a shadow trailing me, a presence too calculated to be coincidental. Finishing the meal felt like enduring an eternity. Once the check was discreetly settled, I made my escape under the pretense of an early morning engagement. I stepped out into the cool night air, yet the relief was short-lived. As I hurried along the dimly lit sidewalk, I became acutely aware of a persistent figure in pursuit. I dared to glance over my shoulder, and there was Alex, moving with an unsettling, predatory grace behind me. Every step I took was mirrored by that relentless silhouette, the distance between us closing with a slow, deliberate menace. Heart pounding and thoughts racing, I navigated through the maze of back alleys and narrow streets, determined to put as much distance between us as possible. At one point, I dashed into a busy intersection where the flood of city lights and a throng of strangers offered a momentary shield. Alex's figure loomed at the edge of the crowd, moving stealthily, as if the darkness itself was an accomplice. I felt the icy grip of terror, knowing that one wrong move could seal my fate. Desperation lent me speed and clarity. I bolted into a narrow side street, where I finally spotted a closed security gate with a keypad. With trembling fingers, I keyed in a number I remembered from a nearby building's security notice. The gate groaned open just as Alex's silhouette emerged from the shadows, reaching out as if to snatch me from my flight. I didn't look back, only the pounding of my heart and the relentless chase spurred me onward. I squeezed past the gate and burst into the relative safety of a quiet residential area. It took me several long minutes to catch my breath and make my way to a neighbor's open door, where I sought refuge and help. Though my escape was narrow, the terror of that night remains etched in my memory, a stark reminder that behind even the most charming smile may lurk a darkness capable of turning a first date into a fight for survival. If you found this story as unnerving as I did, please like, subscribe, and comment below with your country if you've ever had a first date that left you questioning your safety. Story 2. The evening began with the promise of elegance and genuine connection. I had arranged to meet Taylor, a charming individual with a reputation for being effortlessly charismatic, at an upscale restaurant known for its ambient lighting and refined decor. From the moment I stepped through the polished glass doors, the atmosphere hummed with sophistication, yet there was a subtle undercurrent of something amiss that I couldn't quite place. Taylor arrived punctually, dressed in smart casual attire with an easy smile that disarmed my initial reservations. Our conversation started light and flirtatious. We discussed favorite books and hidden travel gems, and Taylor's laughter seemed to fill the space with warmth. However, as the courses of our meal were served, the topics of discussion began to shift. Taylor's questions gradually edged away from small talk and landed on details that felt too personal: my daily routine, the location of my apartment, and even peculiar inquiries about my work schedule. There was an unsettling precision in Taylor's gaze whenever I hesitated or diverted from answering. It felt as though every word I uttered was being noted, recorded by an unseen observer. Then, as dessert was about to be served, a glint of unease sparked when I noticed a stranger at a nearby table, someone whose eyes remained fixed on us with a predatory intensity. I dismissed it as a coincidence, trying to cling to the pleasant illusion of the evening. After dinner, Taylor suggested a post-meal walk in a secluded garden area behind the restaurant, a charming nook lined with antique benches and winding stone paths. The moon hung low, casting eerie shadows that danced across our faces as we strolled. Despite the romantic veneer, the conversation took a disconcerting turn. Taylor's voice lowered, and their eyes darkened as I mentioned a recent news story about targeted stalking incidents in the area. "You never know who might be watching," Taylor murmured, a statement that sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. The atmosphere grew heavier, and my heart pounded with a growing sense of impending doom. I tried to steer the conversation back to lighter subjects, but Taylor's probing questions persisted, each one sharper and more invasive than the last. The subtle but unmistakable feeling of being surveilled intensified, and soon I realized that the stranger I'd noticed earlier was not a random diner, but someone clearly fixated on our every move. The turning point came when I excused myself for a moment to use a restroom in a nearby boutique. On my return, I found Taylor gone. My unease skyrocketed as I scanned the quiet garden. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw movement, a figure slipping between the rows of hedges, too deliberate to be a mere passerby. I reached for my phone to call a friend, but before I could dial, the sound of approaching footsteps quickened, echoing against the stone pathways. Panic surged as I realized I was being followed. I dashed toward a nearby exit, my heart hammering so fiercely I was sure it would give me away. Just as I rounded a bend, I heard the authoritative crackle of police radios and saw flashing blue lights illuminating the garden's entrance. Officers in plain clothes stormed in, their presence a beacon of hope amid the chaos. They quickly surrounded the area, sweeping through the darkened paths while I stood frozen, still trembling from fear. In the midst of the confusion, one officer gently took my arm and asked if I was safe. I recounted the unnerving details, the invasive questions, Taylor's sudden disappearance, and the relentless follower in the shadows. As they searched, the officers discovered a hidden security camera installed near a discreet garden sculpture. The footage revealed that Taylor had been orchestrating every detail of the encounter, deliberately drawing me away from public spaces and ensuring I was vulnerable to an accomplice lurking in the dark. The realization struck me like a bolt of lightning. My seemingly perfect date was nothing but an elaborate trap designed to lure me into isolation. The officers took Taylor into custody on charges of stalking and attempted assault, and as I watched the scene unravel, the weight of the ordeal began to sink in. I had narrowly escaped a meticulously planned danger, but the memory of that night remains etched in my mind, a grim reminder that not every invitation leads to romance, and sometimes the perfect illusion hides a deadly agenda. Story 3. I was drawn to the prospect of a first date with Jordan, a person whose reputation for wit and spontaneity had preceded them. Our meeting was arranged at a small, offbeat cafe that prided itself on its eclectic decor and intimate atmosphere. The evening promised creativity and connection, but from the moment I arrived, an undercurrent of tension stirred beneath the surface. Jordan greeted me with an infectious smile and an energy that was both magnetic and slightly disconcerting. Our initial conversation was a delightful mix of quirky anecdotes and shared interests, punctuated by fits of laughter that seemed to dissolve the chill of the autumn night. But as the evening deepened, the charm began to twist into something more sinister. Jordan's questions shifted from playful banter to invasive inquiries about my personal life, a detailed account of my routines, my financial habits, and even subtle probing into the security measures at my home. A strange tension filled the air when Jordan suggested we extend our date with a drive along a scenic, yet desolate, back road known for its isolation and lack of cell service. It was an invitation that promised the allure of adventure, yet in hindsight, the idea sent a ripple of apprehension through me. Despite the nagging doubts in the back of my mind, I agreed, partly out of politeness and partly driven by a desire to keep the conversation flowing. As we set off, the city lights faded behind us, replaced by the inky darkness of rural roads. The only sounds were the low hum of the car engine and our conversation, a dialogue that increasingly felt like a calculated extraction of personal information. Every so often, Jordan's eyes would flicker with an intensity that was both unnerving and predatory, as if analyzing my reactions in real time. I tried to steer the conversation toward safer subjects, but Jordan's queries grew bolder, more direct. At a narrow bend in the road, with trees looming like silent sentinels, Jordan abruptly turned off the main highway onto a secluded dirt path. The change in scenery was dramatic. The open road gave way to claustrophobic darkness, punctuated only by the occasional rustle of leaves in the wind. My pulse quickened, and I felt a tightening in my chest as doubts swirled in my mind. Was this detour part of an innocent exploration, or was it a deliberate maneuver to isolate me from help? The tension escalated when Jordan parked the car beside an old, dilapidated barn, its windows shattered and its door hanging ajar. "I just love exploring abandoned places," Jordan said casually, as if nothing was amiss. But the unnerving smile and the cold glint in their eyes betrayed a hidden agenda. I stepped out of the car for some fresh air, hoping to clear my racing thoughts. The crisp night air did little to ease my anxiety. As I wandered near the barn, the eerie silence was shattered by the sound of footsteps approaching from behind. I turned around sharply. Jordan was watching me, their expression unreadable in the dim light. A surge of terror overwhelmed me as I realized I was trapped between the desolation of the abandoned structure and the dark, enveloping woods. In that moment, I resolved to escape. Without a word, I sprinted back to the car, my heart pounding in my ears. I fumbled with the keys, adrenaline blurring my movements, and finally managed to start the engine. As I sped away along the winding dirt road, I glanced in the rearview mirror to see Jordan's car slowly pulling up beside me. It was a desperate, chaotic chase through moonlit fields and shadowed forests. Every bump on the rough road felt like a jolt of terror, and every turn threatened to trap me in an inescapable nightmare. For what felt like an eternity, I raced against time and darkness until I finally reached a small highway where the comforting glow of streetlights and the distant hum of other vehicles provided a semblance of safety. I pulled over at a gas station and collapsed into a chair, shivering from shock and the bitter night air. Though I had escaped the clutches of that terrifying midnight ride, the ordeal left me shaken to the core, a vivid reminder that even the promise of adventure can hide a perilous trap.